thought about like doing a look for this video, like kind of a Caroline core, but then I realized I don't own anything that is Caroline core. And I don't think I can pull it off. Like, I think she's one of those girlies who like her outfits are mostly just being skinny, which isn't to say she doesn't have style. Like if she has anything, it's style. The only thing she has is style. But it is interesting that I was like, I own a bunch of like I own a bunch of femme clothing. Like, my wedding dress is basically exactly what Caroline would wear to her wedding, I feel like, except with like a flower crown or like a diamond tiara or something. But I didn't want to do it. Maybe it's just been a long day, and I mean, when it stops raining, I have to go walk the dog, so this is what we got. Caroline Calloway was a minor Instagram influencer, mostly known for her long captions of her fanciful life as an American student abroad in England. She's been Twitter villain of the day at least twice as far as I know, but she came to prominence for two big reasons. One being a piece published about her in The Cut in 2019. It's a piece about her allegedly being a terrible friend and also a fraud. The essay was published in The Cut, written by Caroline's former friend and collaborator, Natalie Beach. Natalie's essay is chock full of interesting allegations, and it was well received, though Natalie has also faced her share of criticism. I mean, who among us has not had a friend who is like pretty unhinged, but like in a charming way? There's a reason I have a policy about that now. If I'm not friends with anyone crazier than me, I'm usually doing fine. I learned about Caroline Calloway listening to a podcast called the Celebrity Memoir Book Club. It is hosted by comedians Ashley Hamilton and Claire Parker. I didn't even hear about the big expose in 2019. Calloway came on CNBC as a guest to defend Lena Dunham's book, which she thinks is a great work of literature, and also like the first of its kind. If you haven't listened to that episode of CNBC, or if you just haven't heard the podcast, I would suggest you do, because it is super fucking wild, and you will be immediately fascinated. Calloway was immediately fascinating to me because it is always interesting when you hear someone talk very confidently about something they clearly know nothing about, and just be like, crazy off the rails, super wrong. Caroline Calloway is actually a species you might be familiar with if you went to a liberal arts school. She's what I call a middle class snob. She's not actually from the upper classes, but she has upper class tastes, and she thinks that she's deserving of better things. Caroline believes that she is enlightened and beautiful and cleverer than other people, and in her mind that makes her worthy of wealth and acclaim and fame and attention. She also thinks that like having a citation for something means that you are always right. I will not spend an hour breaking down this simply ludicrous podcast episode, but one of my favorite things that she says is the idea that now with the internet and the democratization of content, only now do memoirs get written by just anybody. Before that, she said the only women who got to write memoirs were like priestesses and queens, and I'm just like, citation needed. Babes, people have been storytelling. While we don't have all of these old biographical stories, we know they existed. And people have always been telling the stories of their lives, if not exactly in a memoir format. Now, just because the stories of noble women were preserved doesn't mean those other ones didn't exist. This kind of claim is one that Caroline delves into often, just like a sweeping declaration, no context, but like just enough historical detail that you can't call her on it unless you Google it, and most people aren't gonna bother Googling it, so she can say whatever the fuck she wants. Also, it's kind of funny to say that like Lena Dunham is just anyone. Like, even if now only upper class people and nobility got to write memoirs, Lena Dunham would still get to. She was born rich into a family of successful artists. It's really funny because Caroline casts Lena as this like female writer, this underdog who doesn't write for the male gaze, but Lena Dunham is like one of the #1 beneficiaries of patriarchy. She's a white cis woman born into wealth. And not to harp on this, but Caroline spends like 5 minutes defining the words memoir and biography, like a middle school essayist. Merriam-Webster defines biography. It just gets funnier the longer it goes on. Now, I'm a hater by nature and by trade, but even I get drawn in by a pretty white girl who thinks she's special. But the problem is that Caroline makes a lot of claims, and it's hard to say which are true. When someone has gotten so much press for being a liar and a scammer, how can you believe anything they say? Caroline recently self-published Scammer, which she calls a day book, a book that you read in a day. Groundbreaking.
Morals for spring. Groundbreaking.
I mean, she's not the first person to publish short works. It's just weird that she wants to make it like a thing and like brand it. This is also very characteristic of Caroline. She thinks she's like a pioneer at everything. She started an OnlyFans account a little while ago and claimed to be like making content that was somehow enlightened, like porn for the sophisticate. But like, why? Why does she do anything? Because Caroline Calloway isn't an artist or a writer. She's an influencer. That's not to say you can't be all those things. They're influencers of all professions. But Caroline Calloway is a Florence Foster Jenkins, a Tommy Wiseau. She aspires to make good, deep art that is thought-provoking and inspired. But aspiring to something is not accomplishing it. I aspire to be able to do a cartwheel, but I've never succeeded. Calloway is not like other girls. She's deep and real, and she wants things other people won't be honest about wanting. Like money and shiny things. Has she ever, listened to a rap song? It's actually kind of funny that she thinks that she's saying the things nobody else will say. Is it because it's gauche for white people to say they want to be wealthy now? I don't get it. What's the joke? I'm not kidding. Caroline legitimately thinks she's strange and special because she wants to be rich. She's obsessed with legacy universities like Yale and Cambridge, and she lusts after legitimacy because she's what all rich people really disdain. A fake. But let me kind of circle around to the beginning of the timeline. In 2012, Caroline joined Instagram, and through a combination of buying followers and targeted advertising, she managed to actually build a real following. She parlayed this following into a book deal, which was announced in 2016. It was at least 6 figures, but accounts vary. In 2017, Calloway announced that she could not fulfill her contract, so she would have to reimburse her publisher. In 2018, Calloway went properly viral after she tried to lead a creativity workshop that she bungled spectacularly. It was essentially a very niche firefest. She didn't know how to run an event, and she clearly didn't hire anyone who would help her, so she fucked it up completely. The tickets were expensive, and apparently Caroline didn't even get as far as booking a venue. Late 2019 is when the Natalie Beach piece came out, though you wouldn't know it from the way Caroline talks about it. She talks about it as if she was this unproblematic 25-year-old teenage girl influencer whose friend threw her under the bus. She's obsessed with the idea of herself as a young ingenue who didn't know any better, but she's fully 30 now, and she wasn't that young then. At a certain point, you have to own your mistakes and become an adult. I'm not trying to give too much credence to Natalie's version of events, but Caroline had already had one major scandal by the time the cut piece came out. Actually, 2 if you count her breaking her publishing deal. Caroline claims that Natalie ruined her reputation, and maybe that's true. But Caroline had already done considerable damage in that area by the time Natalie got to it. I do think that, as in most cases, there's Caroline's story and Natalie's story and the truth somewhere in between. I just don't know how much you can trust someone who characterizes herself as a liar and a scammer. In terms of the content of her book, Caroline is now claiming she scammed her way into Cambridge by fudging her transcripts, but who knows? She managed to graduate, which is certainly an accomplishment. As a writer, I don't know how talented she is. Listening to her speak, she seems like a grade A bullshitter, but not in the good way. In her book, which has so far only been released to the media and has not made its way to any people who actually bought it, Calloway makes a mistake that I think is endemic to the genre of memoir these days, but is annoying all the same. She mistakes vulnerability for good writing. Writing about something taboo or personal or awful does not make it good or interesting. There's one particularly egregious thing that's included in this memoirette, which is that Caroline included Natalie's sexual assault story in her work. And the fact that Caroline herself was aroused by hearing the story from Natalie. When Caroline was asked about including this in her book, she said that she included it because she didn't feel like she owed it to Natalie to omit the story, and that it's a part of Caroline's story too. So I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but it's not cool to make someone else's sexual assault about you. Even if someone isn't my friend anymore, I'm gonna keep my feelings about their sexual assault to myself, and believe me, I have stories. Every woman knows someone. Most women have stories of their own, and saying, she was awful to me, so I get to be awful to her right back. That's not the serve Caroline thinks it is. Further, when Caroline is asked about objectifying women, she says that she objectifies men even more, so it's making it even. Is this what Caroline thinks feminism is? Objectifying everyone equally? You do not have to objectify people at all, weirdly enough. It's not required. Maybe she's been reading too much literary fiction. You can even objectify people and then reject it in the text. It just shows how little Caroline actually thinks about other people. I think there is one cardinal sin in Caroline Calloway's work, and it's this. She's wasted every opportunity she's ever been given, and she keeps getting more chances. She got a book deal, a really good book deal, better than most writers will ever receive, and she fucked it up completely. She could have hired someone to do her workshops for her and then just showed up, but she didn't because she thinks she can do anything, and she blew it up in her own face. She graduated from an exclusive university, but she couldn't spin that into any sort of career, despite the fact that graduates from so-called good schools do have notable advantages in the job market. And there's nothing wrong with self-publishing. I love so many self-published authors, especially since there are a lot of great works that traditional publishers just won't take on. But Calloway had a trad publishing deal, a really good one, and she blew it. And now she's self-publishing short memoirs to an audience of gawkers. And maybe those gawkers can support Calloway for the rest of her life. Maybe they'll pay her bills forever. But if she's gonna continue to publish Drek, she'll never be anything more than a cut-rate performance artist, and not the auteur she longs to be. And maybe she's given up on making real art, but I don't think so. It's too bad, because she probably does have talent. So few people get this many chances. But to me, Caroline Calloway is just emblematic of the ways mediocre white women are able to succeed without making any notable strides of their own. Caroline's notoriety doesn't come from her work, it doesn't come from her talent. It comes from being messy and from being a niche internet personality. And frankly, I think that's probably all she'll ever be. That might be the most tragic thing to her of all. And if she really thinks that she's anything else, she might be just as delusional as people think she is. Anyway, that's my thoughts. If you're interested in random videos of this nature, comment, like, subscribe. I've been offline for a bit because life. But if this one does well, and it just might, I'll probably try to do more often. I keep saying that I'm gonna be back more regularly, and I keep writing videos, but work is exhausting, life is busy, and, no rest for the wicked. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.